Welcome to the Legacy Leadership Podcast, where we help Christian founder-led nonprofits get funded so that you can lead well, live whole, and leave a legacy. Today, I want to talk to you about how you turn vision into action. For so many of us, we have these big visions, these big goals. We have things that we want to accomplish. And if you're like many other visionaries, the action of actually getting it into happening can oftentimes be difficult. The traction that you might want to be able to make those things happen is hard. You have these visions, you have these things you want to accomplish, but the actual making them happen, the implementation of that vision or the accomplishment of that vision is often hard to attain. And that's what I want to talk to you today. I want to share a process and a framework that I used in a number of my own organizations when I was doing for-profit consulting. This is the framework that we taught to leadership teams for being able to grow and scale their businesses. I use this as I coach other nonprofits that I work with more individually. And I call this process the vision to action process, the vision to action framework. And I'm going to walk you through what this is. I do these vision calls specifically with people to talk through their big 3-year vision. So I'm going to talk through a little bit of that process with you. And then, excuse me, I'm going to talk through a little bit of that process with you. And then I'm going to share this vision to action process with you so that you can take these tools, you can implement them in your own organization, you can use them for accomplishing the vision that God's given you. And for many people, they choose to work with me more one-on-one, have me do some coaching, walk them through this specific process, but the actual steps are not hard, they're not difficult to be able to comprehend and understand. So in vision to action, we want to start with a 3-year vision. This is our place to dream. This is our place to think about what would I want my organization to be 3 years from now. And I find that 3 years is a really good time period because it's just far enough into the future where we can visualize it, we can conceptualize it, we can picture what 3 years might look like. But it's also far enough into the future where we're not getting caught up in the weeds. We're not getting these limiting beliefs popping up in our head that are saying, well, that's too hard. That can't be accomplished. You can't do that. And I find 3 years to be a really good balance. Some experts and leadership consultants will say you need a 10-year vision and then you bring it back to a 5. I've found with working with lots of people, a 3-year picture is really one of the best places to start, especially if you're not used to doing vision planning and really spelling things out. So let's do that together. I want you to think about 3 years from now. I'm recording this podcast in May of 2026. And so we would be picturing that we're now in May of 2029. And I want you to look back and tell me all the things that would have had to be accomplished in order for you to feel completely fulfilled. What are all the things that you would say, I'm excited that we were able to accomplish X, Y, Z. I'm grateful that we have now been able to build that learning center, that we've been able to build the school. I'm grateful that we now have acquired a retreat center, or I'm grateful that we are now at 3,000 children in our school, or 1,500 young people in our youth program, or maybe I'm grateful now that I have a staff of people that are helping me, that I'm no longer alone in doing the ministry. I've been doing so much of this by myself, and I'm grateful that I have a team. Whatever that might be, I want you to think about 3 years from now and paint that picture. Think about who's on your team. Think about your programs that you're currently operating. What does growth look like in those programs? Think about the maybe capital projects or the building that you have, the space that you're using for your program. Maybe you want to have more vehicles in your fleet that you want to be able to pick people up or provide transportation. Maybe you run a food pantry and you want to be able to serve more people or have a larger space that you can serve them in. Think about that 3 year vision. What does that look like? Where are you at? Maybe it's a revenue number and you're more of a numbers person and you want to grow from $20,000 a year to $40,000 a year in annual revenue 3 years from now, or whatever that might be. But I want you to really picture, where am I at 3 years from now? I want you to picture, where are you at personally 3 years from now? For so many of us running our own organizations, being the founders, it can feel burdensome after a while. We have this vision and we're investing everything in it. It's taking all of our time, all of our energy. Maybe we're not spending the kind of time that we want to with our families right now. And so part of your 3 year vision is that you have more time with your family, or you've been able to take that family vacation that you keep telling everybody that you're going to take. Maybe you're able to take a sabbatical and take a couple of weeks off and really just focus on your own health and wellness. Maybe you have more large partners that are involved with you and funding everything that's going on. Whatever that looks like, I want you to think 3 years out from now and paint that picture. And then the first step, or I guess second step, first step is painting the picture. Second step is to bring it back to 1 year. If you could only have 1 to 3 things happen out of that 3 year picture, if you picked 1 to 3 of those and could make them happen in the next year, what would those be? Maybe one of them is building the learning center, or maybe one is growing from 50 to 100 program participants. Maybe it's that you take the family vacation. It doesn't really matter to me what it ends up being, but I want you to pick only 1 to 3. You might have thought of a whole bunch of different things in that 3 year picture, but now, in order to make it actionable, we're going to bring it down to something that's realistic, something that can actually be accomplished, something tangible. And so, what are 1 to 3 things that you want to accomplish this year? And you're only allowed to pick 1 to 3. And these are your big organizational goals. I've found that people who pick 1 to 3 goals and focus on them tend to accomplish all of them. People that pick 4 to 7 goals tend to only accomplish about half. And those who pick 7 or more goals, oftentimes they don't accomplish any of them. Their focus is so split in so many directions that they don't actually get traction and accomplish anything. So that's why I want you to focus on only 1 to 3. Once you have those 1 to 3 goals, we're going to bring it down into quarterly rocks. Now, I like to use this example. I actually got this example from Gino Wickman's book Traction, but it's not an analogy that is only his. I've heard this analogy in Tim Elmore's Habitudes books, and other leadership experts have talked about it. But when it comes to this vision to action framework, I've heard Gino Wickman talk about this in his book Traction. I would highly recommend that for organizational systems. Similar to some of the systems that I've built for nonprofit, but his is more focused on for-profit business system, and really powerful. I think maybe I'll do a review on that book and talk about how some of those things apply to fundraising and how they apply to nonprofits. But for right now, I'm kind of getting off track. Rocks. This is why they're called rocks. It's the analogy of managing our life. You have rocks, pebbles, sand, and water, all in these different jars. And oftentimes, what we do is we take the water and we pour that into a jar. And then we take our pebbles and we pour the pebbles into the jar. And then we pour the sand, then the pebbles. And then when we finally try to fit the bigger rocks into the jar, they don't fit. And it's because we bring our priorities out of order and we make our biggest priorities the last thing that we try to get fit in. The four disciplines of execution, they talk about the whirlwind. Just the whirlwind is everything that's going on in our day-to-day lives. And that's what is represented by the water, by the sand, by the pebbles. It's all the things that are constantly hitting us. It's the urgent things that aren't necessarily important, but they're right in front of us, and so we have to deal with them. And then we try to fit our priorities or our goals or our other things, we try to fit it in the extra space. But when we try to fit our most important things in the extra space in between all the day to day, they don't fit. And in this analogy or this visual, if we remove all the elements again and we have the water, the sand, the pebbles, and the rocks all in their own jars with one empty jar in front of us that represents our life, if we start with the rocks, the big things, the priorities, if we make time for those first, and then we backfill the pebbles and then the sand, we might have to shake the pebbles around, but they start to fill in the space in between the rocks. And then the sand fills in the space in between the pebbles. And when we finally pour in the water, it fills it right to the brim, but there's space for every single piece of it because we started with the biggest things first. When we start with those big rocks, we find that we actually have space to accomplish everything that we've set out to do. And that's one of the secrets of this vision to action process, is that we are very clear on what our goals are, our annual goals, and then our quarterly rocks. And that's why I call them rocks. They're the most important things that I need to accomplish this quarter. That if I want to accomplish a particular goal this year, then I need to have an actionable step, a stepping stone, a measure of what I need to accomplish after the first quarter. I can just take my goal and divide it in four, or maybe there's four major steps that I need to accomplish during the year if it's not a numbers goal, but there's four things that I need to do. So Q1, this is what my major thing is that I need to do. And again, if you have 1 to 3 annual goals for your organization, you might have 1 to 3 rocks, but you're not allowed any more than that. You have to limit yourself and say, these are the 1 to 3 biggest things that I have to accomplish, and I need to make space for those. And then you're going to bring it down to a monthly goal. If this is what I need to accomplish in 90 days, then what do you need to accomplish in the next 30 days? What do you need to accomplish by the end of the next month to make sure that you're on track for accomplishing that rock? And then you bring it down to weekly. What do I need to accomplish by the end of this week in order for me to be on track to accomplish my monthly goal? It's not rocket science, it's not complicated, but it's something that we often miss doing. We think of these big visions, these big things that we want to accomplish, and we think that somehow it's either just going to happen or we are so detached from it that we have no idea how to make it happen. And this is how you do it. 3-year picture, 1-year goal, quarterly rocks, my monthly focus, what's happening this week, my number one priority, and then what is the number one action I need to take today in order to accomplish that weekly goal. So I bring it down to daily action, daily behavior, daily metrics. Every single morning, I ask myself, what is the number one action I need to take today in order to accomplish that weekly goal? And if I accomplish that weekly goal, I know that I'll get my monthly. And if I accomplish my monthly, I know I get my quarterly. And when I get my quarterly goals 4 times in a row, I've accomplished my annual goals. And before you know it, you've accomplished your 3-year vision. It's a really, really beautiful thing. And it works. In my organizations, we always had a 3-year picture that was out there. We actually got to the point after doing this a couple of times where we started putting a 10-year vision out there. And at the end of every 3 years, we would say, are we on track for that 10-year picture, the things we want to accomplish? And the cool thing was, when we looked at it, we were always 80 to 90% on track for accomplishing that 10-year vision. The big things that we were dreaming of, the things that we wanted to accomplish. And it was because we made our goals actionable. We were able to find traction as we decided every single day, what do I need to do to accomplish that goal? And it's really, really cool. I was just sharing with some folks on a fundraising momentum workshop that I was doing this past week. I was sharing about one of my partners in Guatemala. And when I first met with them, it was about 3 years ago now that we had our first meeting, and we had a vision session together where I sat down with them and we talked about what their 3-year picture was. We mapped that out together. And in their 3 year picture, they wanted to have several learning centers built. And at that time, they didn't have the funding, they didn't have the capacity. They had the vision, the desire, the dream, but no way to actually make it happen. And so we pulled that down to annual goals together. They went through my program that I had at that time. I was running an academy to help people understand how do you implement fundraising in your organization and recruit volunteers. And I worked with them in different sessions to help them understand how do they make these things actionable? How do they go and ask for the money? What are the things that they need to be doing every single day? And now, 3 years later, they're finishing out that last learning center that they had set the intention that they wanted to do 3 years ago. Absolutely amazing. I love being part of helping people accomplish the visions that God's given them. And that's a big way that I do it. We follow this framework. And sometimes you need a coach to walk you through. Sometimes you need somebody to help you make that all happen. And if you do, you can always send me an email. You could go to my website, legacyleadershipsystem.com, and there's actually a spot you can book a session with me. We can have a vision session together. I'd love to talk with you and have you share your vision, and we can talk through how do you make that actionable? What are the next steps? How do you actually make that vision happen? And so that would be your step is think about your 3 year vision, create that picture, and if you're stuck, just go to my website, legacyleadershipsystem.com, and book a vision session so that we can talk about how to help you. And like I usually say, or always say, at the end of these podcasts, remember to lead well, live whole, and leave a legacy.